Hey y'all, how you doing? All right. Everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. Good, good. Just want to make sure, just trying some new settings and things out. We'll wait for everybody to roll in if possible, and then we're going to go over a few things and the addition we have onto our dungeon project. Go ahead and share the agenda we have here. Let's see. Looks like we're just missing Stool, Joseph. What else? There's Joseph, speak of the devil. All right, Joseph, Donovan's here. Cat will probably see at some point. Kai, that's what it is. Looking for Kai. Now let's wait just a little bit and see if we get any Kai here. Well, we might not get a Kai, so I guess we'll move on. So, we have a slight issue, which oh, hey, look at that. About to give up, and there's Kai. All right, good stuff. Hey, Kai, I was just talking about you. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to keep moving on this. This is going to be like our first real big project that we're going to be pulling in a lot of different pieces. So we're just going to keep building and building and building on this. The problem with that is, at this point, for those people who are working in Pythonista, I've had to find a bit of a workaround. Supposedly, Pythonista, when I was first looking at this, was going to have an option to export files as projects, just straight out. You would be able to send them as a Python project through email or anything else. Apple decided they didn't like that. So in iOS, I guess from iOS 13, and currently we're about to get into iOS 14, they, and even before this, they were kind of restricting who was going to be able to do what. and how they were going to be able to move files around. Because actually, Pythonista, given all the options that it should have, Pythonista could write code, and it can actually write code for your iPad. Like it can write shortcut code, it can write code for a lot of things. It's just Apple's throwing up little walls in places to keep people from sharing little shortcut Python codes that they'll be able to use to modify their iPad, their iPhone, any iOS device. So it's kind of a method for them to protect themselves, make sure that everything that they are that is available is something that is workable. It's going to work no matter where they have it, and it's been tested, which I appreciate, but it also does limit what you can do. So the walled garden that Apple has right now is kind of restricting us. So over the weekend, I was working a little bit on the new part of the project, but I was also trying to find a good way for us to be able to share our projects, because I had 2 people send in their projects over the weekend, and those 2 people are going to get full agency credit for those. Don't worry about anything on that. Everybody else, if you didn't try to send me anything, your agency grade is waning. But we need to be able to send projects back and forth. Because of that, I've got what I believe will be a good fix for us. It's an app called Working Copy. It's an iOS GitHub app. So what happens is you work on your project inside of Pythonista. If you're in PyCharm, this is going to be a way easier, but if you're in Pythonista, which I think many of us are, you're going to take your Pythonista project. You'll be able to see it in working code or working copy. Working Copy uploads it to GitHub, which I'll go over a little bit later. And then from there, I'll be able to download your current version of whatever you have from that GitHub repository down to my computer and check it out on PyCharm. So this is something that I have to get the app out to you guys. It's not something you can just go out to, as far as I can tell. As far as I can tell, I'm going to have to make Simpson get it and put it on your iPads, okay? So that's what's slowing us down there. So with that in mind, I've pushed back the due date for this new assignment that I'm going to go over today called Room1 Monsters, okay? And this is just going to add on some more complexity. By the time we get done with Room 1, it's going to be a template for all the other rooms that you're going to have to build in this dungeon. But Room 1 is going to take a little while to build, okay? So I'll kind of go over that in just a little bit. And that's one reason I really wanted to spend some time trying to find the best way for everybody to try and move their projects off of their iPad. And I believe this working copy option is going to work for us. So with that in mind, we're going to have to go a little bit slow, but we're going to still be able to progress. Just won't be able to see everything until we have working copy going. So what my plan is that between today and tomorrow, Mr. Simpson should be able to get working copy on your iPads. And then I'm hoping on Wednesday, I'll be able to show you guys how to upload your project in working copy up to GitHub, and then I'll download or I'll pull a copy of your Pythonista project down to my computer, and I'll be able to go through it. Okay. Does everybody kind of understand where we're at right here? If you do, just give me a thumbs up, and we're all good. If not, please ask questions. Okay. Thank you, Joe. All right, I didn't see everybody pipe in there, so I just want to check. Madeline, are there any questions that you have? Are you unsure about anything that we're trying to talk about right now? Okay, Anita, how about you?
Any questions about the code, you're saying?
Well, not necessarily the code, but what we're up to right now as far as sharing the project and what the roadmap looks like for us trying to get that project sharing part of it going.
Okay, so clarification. Basically, we're our new project is gonna be the Room 1, and that's gonna be our template, right?
So the whole monster fighter thing is the dungeon. The dungeon. Let's see, what do I have this thing called? So we can all talk about it the same way. The dungeon project overall. The first thing we tackled was the monster fighter, which is where you make your character and you decide, hey, I like these roles. I'm going to go with that person. And then from that point, we'll go and pull in the module for the room one, for room one. So we'll have some code in the main body that'll go out to room one, and it'll call different parts of room one. In fact, room one will call things inside of itself a little bit too. I'm going to go over that a little bit today. And the main reason I don't have you guys submitting this like on Wednesday is that I want to give us some time to get this working copy app working for us, so we can start submitting the entire project and we can start showing everything together. Because most of the time, working on a Python project, you're not looking at a single file. You're looking at, could be 5, 10, several different ones. Maybe not even on your computer. It could be out someplace else, and it's accessing files outside of where you're at. I was just one that randomly grabs YouTube videos. I was kind of interested in how that was working. So it's actually going out to YouTube and pulling in some stuff from out there. But that's something we'd get into a lot later. Does that kind of make sense to you, Anita?
Yes, I think I need to see it more. Like, see what you mean. Yeah, we go more into it.
I'm going to do a workshop on, hopefully on Wednesday. Hopefully everything happens where everybody's got working copy by Wednesday, and then I can walk through it with you guys. Let's see.
A working copy of the Monster Fighter, or a working copy of the Room Monster?
No, working copy is the name of the app I need to get those iPads. Currently, there's a big, long, scripted workaround to be able to use GitHub or Dropbox or Library.io or a lot of different kind of repository functions. I was looking for one that maybe we could just use Google Docs, Google Drive, to be able to share it, but it's not really a good way to do that. So it looks like after I hunted around and did some research, GitHub was the best way to use this, and a lot of people use GitHub. It's kind of a programming skill that most people need to learn anyway. So we're going to start working with it. And I think that this is going to be, it's really not too difficult. The few commands that you need are commit, copy, and that's kind of it as far as uploading things. And then as far as pulling them back, I would just copy it off of the server. And that's about it. It's not too difficult once you get into it. Since at this point, we would be able to share GitHub repositories. That means people can work on projects together. So later on, when this gets to be really, really kind of a big project, I would like to put people together in groups to be putting together their dungeon after we keep working with this. So that'll make your lives a lot easier. You're going to have to make sure that your code works the same way and they're using similar variables, or the same variables. Can't use similar ones, you have to do the exact same way. That kind of thing, to make sure that your code is talking across each other. Okay, Donovan, I saw your hand kind of going up and down, and wanted to see if you had any questions about what we're up to.
I had a question, and then I realized I don't. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joseph, you doing okay? You have any questions about what we're up to?
No.
No? Okay. And last on my list here is Kai. Are we doing okay? Do you understand what we're up to right now?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Well, let me go over Monster Fighter. I'm sorry, Room 1 Monsters, and we can talk about the functionality that we're looking to add onto our program. Now, in Room 1, this is where you initially end up in the actual dungeon. Like you've got past the door, you're inside, this is the first room in your dungeon. So if anybody's played D&D before, this might seem kind of familiar. And usually you're going to have a description of the room. If anybody's played a Zork game, this is a really old text-based game. I'm not sure if you guys are even familiar with it. But this was one of the games I would play on the Commodore 64 back when I was a little kid. And it was, you type in what you want to do, and then the computer would pull anything from the text that you put in, and you would say, look at room, and it would give you a description of the room. And you could say, turn north, and it would tell you like, oh, okay, you turn north, and this is what you see. So that's kind of what we're going to start emulating here in a little bit. But I wanted to get some of the bigger parts out of this because, I mean, for lack of a better way, D&D is a storytelling game, but a lot of people pick it up and they just go in and fight monsters. You know, they're looking for traps, they're fighting monsters, they're having a fun time. It's, you know, what we did before we had a lot of really crazy video games to play together. So still a lot of people playing it pencil and paper because it lets you have just such a broad way to play and personalize it. At any rate, we're going to take a look at this one. So room 1, the basic parts that I want to have you set up are the room 1 file by itself. We need that. We're also going to need another file called monster manual. Okay, in the monster manual, that's where we're going to have all the monsters laid out. Now, if you look here, I've given the first monster you guys are going to have, it's called a dire rat. It's like a big old rat that's about the size of a medium dog. And a lot of times you'll see them in more than just one of them. But in this case, we're just going to send one into this space. We're going to deal with like multiple monsters a little bit later. For right now, I just want you guys to deal with something small. So we're going to make a dire rat in the monster manual. And the monster manual should be something inside of our DM guide directory. So we have that in that directory. That will have a basic monster parental class, like a parent class, not a super class necessarily, but a parent class like we've been talking about. That's your basic class. It's called Basic Monster. You can see it right here in the description of making the dire rat class. It pulls from the basic monster, which has monster name, strength, agility, and health. Okay, we fed in the dire rat has a strength of 3. It's pretty low, you know, not very high, but it's still, you know, medium-sized dog. It's pretty strong. Its agility is 8, so it can move really well. And its health is 3. It's not very healthy. So you should be able to, if you hit it once, chances are you're probably going to take it out. So what's going to happen with this is inside of room 1 monsters, you're going to need to make a function called player turn and a function called monster turn. Because the way this works is whenever you encounter a monster, you're going to have to check your agility versus the monster's agility. Whoever has the highest goes first. And that's usually a big deal because whoever goes first deals damage first, usually. Okay? So we want to have player's turn compared. We need to have it compared, say like, okay, if the player's agility, the fighter's ability, or agility is higher than our monsters, let's do fighter turn first. So what'll happen is it'll roll a D20 out of our dice bag. It'll roll a D20 plus the strength, and I've kind of got this laid out here, plus the strength of our fighter, and compare that to the agility of our monster. So we'll roll a D20 plus the agility of the monster, compare those together. If the player's roll is higher than the monster's roll, not equal, but as long as it's higher, then they'll do damage based on the difference of those two scores. So let's say our fighter rolls a 15 and our rat rolls a 12. That's good enough to do 3 points of damage. That's the difference. And that's enough to take out the dire rat. So it wouldn't be a very long fight. It would end like that. Okay. However, if the player rolled a 10 and the rat got a 13, nothing happens to the rat. Rat escaped. Nothing happened to it. But after the fighter's turn happens, then the monster's turn happens, okay? And they'll go back and forth until one of them is incapacitated, until one of them is down to 0 health, okay? So another thing you're gonna need is you need to get the current health of your monster and the current health of your fighter, and you need to be evaluating those every time you go through this. So there's a couple different things that can make you drop out of your while loop that's cycling through here as they fight, okay? So we need to check what's the current health of the monster. If the monster's current health drops to 0, fight's over. If the player's health drops to 0, fight's over. Okay. However, when the player stays alive and the monster's health goes to 0, the game keeps going. So we want to have it move to something else. Okay. So in this case, we only have you building the part where they fight each other. So if the player wins, you can just leave a little message in there, yay, you won, and you look around the room. We don't have it moving on anywhere else yet. It will. So just keep that in mind. If you want to start building towards that, that's fine. But if the monster wins the fight, then the monster is going to have to, it'll stay alive, and we just say, you expired in a gruesome, horrible fashion. As you know, you can say whatever you want for that monster. The monster eats your innards, or whatever you want. It's fine. We could probably get into that a little bit later. But I'm trying to build this and give you guys the idea for this in small pieces, because it's going to get a lot more complex as we keep building this. As I said before, we're not just going to have a fighter. Later on, we're going to have a rogue and a wizard. Okay? The rogue and the wizard will have different attacks from the fighter. Same thing, we're going to start adding in special attacks for the monsters. So the dire rat later on will get a leaping attack. So it can actually start attacking more a little earlier. So that's something we're going to add in later on, but we're not going to have it right now. It's just very basic. Okay. So at the end of this, by the time you get Room 1 Monsters done, your project, actually let me just share my PyCharm screen with you guys. There we are. I'll show you the files that we should have by the time we're done with this. So you're going to have your main file right here that has all of the information about what's going on with creating our character initially and managing which room we're going into, are we pulling information for the monsters, that kind of thing. Then you'll also have, we go up here to our DM guide directory, you'll have the character creator, you'll have the dice bag, the monster manual, here's Room 1. I've just got Scratch because I made that to just try some ideas and play with something without writing it in one of the functions or modules that in one of the modules that I was wanting to build something from. So at the end of this, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including the initialization py file there. And those should all be in the directory for DM guide. And then you'll have a 6th file, which is your main.py file, which will control everything as you move through it. So I've already started working on my Room 1 file here, and also the monster manual. You can see I have the dire rat right here. There's no special functions for them yet, so they just are using the pass or the pass setup here. We don't need to have anything special for them just yet. Get these all kind of in the same space. There we go. So next after the rat, we're going to be creating the gelatinous cube and a kobold, which is like a little lizardy rodent looking kind of thing, which can hold weapons, and they usually attack in threes and stuff like that. So that's where we're going to start thinking about how we can do initiative against multiple enemies and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to start building in complexity. Okay. All righty. So if you have not finished the first part, which is just building out main 1 or the main file here to go with the dice bag and the character creator. Okay. If you don't have those yet, they're late. They need to be turned in. You need to at least send the Python files to me. Okay. But to keep me from having to rebuild your projects over and over again, that's why I'm looking at the GitHub option. Because otherwise, I'm going to have to make a directory for you guys. I'm going to have to put everything into its proper place, and then I can check it, which is going to take a little while. Not terribly long, but it'll take a little while. So this will just be better for us. Okay. So as far as the addition of adding in the Room 1, our assignment here, Room 1 Monsters, is there any questions about this assignment? Anything you're not quite sure of? Okay. So you guys all feel like you pretty much understand? Okay, Anita, thank you. Appreciate it. Can't really see everybody here. Thanks, Donovan. Got it. Kai says it's good. Joe, you may have given a thumbs up, but I don't know if I saw it or not. You're good? Okay. So last is Joseph and Madeline. Do you guys have any questions about what we're looking at here? Somebody said something in the chat probably. I don't know how to do the character building. Okay, we can go through that. Give me just a second. Let me pop back over to PyCharm. There we are. So as far as character building goes, we want the person who is playing the game to be able to roll up a character. That means they're going to go randomly generate the values that they're going to have for these attributes, which are strength, agility, and health. Later on, you'll be able to give the person a name as well. So we're going to, whenever we build Fighter 1, which is making a class based on basic character, which we have here. Basic character is up here at the top. Okay. That's our parent class. And from there, we're going to have it, or we're going to give it a character name, strength, agility, and health, which we got all from re-rolling and rolling up here. And we want to give the player 3 chances to re-roll. So they get their initial roll, which they'll be able to see right away, see what's going on. In fact, I can just kind of show you. Just run main. I think it'll give us, okay. Well, I've got some issues in the monster manual and the DM guide since I've been messing with Room 1, so I'll have to have some things fixed there. But for the main on here, previously everything was working when I showed it on. I think it was Wednesday, actually. And the main thing here is whenever it goes to character creator over here, it's just going to pull this information and it's going to feed back strength, agility, and health. Okay. So we're going to return these values, and the way you pull those values back in is that if character.lower is m, then we want to call the function here. We don't have to send anything to it because we're just getting the values from character creator. And then since we know it's going to be feeding into these values, we can unpack it by just putting in, let's take a look at character creator again. We're going to get strength, agility, and health. Okay. And we know we want to feed them back in the same way. So strength, agility, and health. So those values come back in as those. Then this is displaying what values we got. So the player knows, okay, this is the strength, agility, and health for your character. Do you like it? If you do, cool, we're going to move on. If you don't, then we can re-roll again. So we have a variable here that's checking to see how many times have you rolled. We start off at 1 right here because we get our initial roll up. We get our initial roll before we start counting the number of re-roll times. So we want to count that first one that we get right here where it goes out to character creator and just shows up like, hey, this is the first roll you get. Then you get 3 more chances, okay? So as far as getting the values, we're just going out to this function and getting those values fed back. We're unpacking them right here, and then we're displaying them here, okay? Here's our while loop that we've used to keep track of any re-rolls that the player may want to go through. And this is just saying, okay, if you've got rolls left to use, so that's right here, as long as we're above or equal to 1 or we're less than 3, we're okay, we can keep rolling on here. And every time we add 1 to re-roll, we want to subtract it from 4 because that's, we start off with 1, so we want to kind of show us like how many we have left. And then if re-rolls is greater than or equal to 3, then this is your last chance to re-roll. That means we're getting up to the point where we need to cut it off. Okay, at 3 or greater, it shouldn't go over, but we're just kind of doing that to make sure we don't accidentally miss anything. Then we're going to, I'm using the word satisfied here as a way to check and see, are they fine with what they like? Do they enjoy what they have? Cool, let's move on. Otherwise, they can hit R to reroll or M to move on. If it's M, the confirm stats is false, and that will allow us to move on down to here, and we can start getting the name of our character. And that means we've solidified our role for all these different attributes that we have right here, strength, agility, and health. We're feeling good about that. And then we display this here. So it'll say like, are you ready to head in? After this, we would go into dmguide.room1.room description. So if we go into room 1, that's going to call, so here's a little sampling of player turn. I have to send the monster current health to that because on the player's turn, the player's taking a swipe at the monster. On the monster's turn, the monster's taking a swipe at the fighter. So we don't really need to send the monster's health, but we do need to send the fighter's health whenever we're looking at the monster's turn. Here's room description right here. It's just going to print this out to the screen. Later on, we'll be able to leave little, we can set up a dictionary. That's a possibility. That might actually be good for some of these things later on. But for right now, we just have a description of the room. And you can search the room, you can search the skeletons, or you can leave. If you leave, you just go out the front door and nothing happens. The game's over. But if we decide to start searching the room, that's where we're going to hit the rat. But initially, you guys don't have to worry about the description. I'm just going to add that on to our next one where we fill out room 1 a little bit more. In fact, I'm going to have you enter the dungeon without any equipment. So you'll need to search the room and pick up a sword. So that'll be able to add to your strength ability later on too. So your ability to hit and do damage will go up if you find that sword. So right now we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to assume you decided to go in all prepared. Later on, we're going to make it so you have to gather equipment as you go. But for now, just assume you have everything you need. All right, and then we get down into working on everything else. Does that help you a little bit on that, Joseph? And also, was the description in the assignment, did that help you a little bit with that as well? It helped. Okay, cool. Well, if you have any other questions, just, pop in with whatever you have, and we'll just go from there. Okay, so it's going to take me a little bit to try and get some of this stuff figured out with the copy, with working copy, with the working copy app. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but it is free. I don't have to worry about paying for it. And it looks like the instructions are fairly simple. So as soon as I can get a copy myself so I can start working with it, I'll start building the functionality for it. Hopefully you guys will start seeing it showing up pretty soon. Other than that, let's see, does the dice need to be specific on the character's ability health? So health is going to be, it's kind of your, it's your hearts, it's your health points, it's how much damage you can actually take. Okay, so for a fighter, you might want to re-roll until you got pretty high health and strength. Agility may not be as big of a deal, but usually you want to have high health, so they're your tank, in that case, as far as dice needed, you only really need those whenever you're calculating them, and we roll a d10 to calculate those. So we go over here to the character creator. When we call this, it calls the function d10 right here for each of these. That's going to randomly generate that value based on what we have in the dice bag. So here is our dice bag for d10 right here. It's able to generate a random int between 1 and 10. Okay. I should probably set it to 2 to 10 because usually, a fairly broadly used rule is if you get a 1, you re-roll it. But we'll just leave it in there for now, just to kind of keep everybody from being too confused with what's going on. Hopefully you don't get any 1s. They do you no good. But I'm hoping that later on we can also add in exploding dice, which is if you roll a 20, then you get a critical success. But like I said, at this point, we just want to add in the basics. Okay. All right. Does that help you a little bit with that, Madeline? So yes, health does generate initially with a D10. Later on, it's not as much that it's going to be pertaining to. It's just the damage that you're going to take. Your current health will change. Another thing to throw in, something you might want to think about is later on, as health drops to less than half, it'll also start affecting your other stats. So that's something to think about later on. Not necessarily now, but if your health is dropping less than half, your strength and your agility start to go down too. So all your stats are going to be able to change. They can improve, obviously. You can pick up health potions, and you can regenerate your health, which will also regenerate anything you lost in your other things that are related to that. We'll throw in other magical devices that will be able to enhance your abilities. So as you go through the dungeons, you can pick these things up. So just think about anything that is possible. We're probably going to try and add it in. Okay? All right. Well, if you guys feel good about where we're headed as far as like what we have next, this assignment, the new assignment's not due till at the end of class on Friday. So we'll have time on Wednesday as well as Friday to go through issues of the code itself, as well as uploading the project through working copy and GitHub. Okay, so just kind of a little more of an information session today and kind of showing you where we're headed. And if you're ready, you can go ahead and start tackling the new assignment. Well, if you feel good about everything, you don't have any other questions, just give me a thumbs up and you are free to go.
Sir, I have a question.
Absolutely, go ahead.
So when the monster starts dealing damage, does it go down by 1, or depending on the attack that the monster uses, it goes down a significant?
Yeah, it depends on the roll. So the way this goes is the attacker uses their strength plus a d20 roll to get their full score. So let's say we have the monster attacking the fighter. Okay, so let's say the dire rat, which if we go over to our monster manual, the dire rat has a strength of 3. So let's say the dire rat rolls a 10, then that adds the 3 to it, has a total score of 13. Now, if we go to our fighter, now that randomly generates every time we decide to play the game.
Yeah.
So let's say that guy has an agility of 6. Okay, we roll on a d10, we got a 6, and then he rolls, so that's his agility rating is a 6. We're going to take that and add a d20 roll, so a random d20 roll on that, and let's say he gets a 10. Okay, great. So that means that the dire rat did not touch the fighter because the fighter had a higher roll. It doesn't matter how big of a roll at this point, just that the fighter had a larger number. In fact, on any time where they equal each other, so if they both got 13, the defender always wins. That's not something I've added in just yet, but we will. The next thing to do is if the dire rat actually hit the player. So we took our strength and the d20 roll. Let's say we had a 13 again. We had that from before. But our fighter gets a measly 12. Okay? So that means at that point, that dire rat hit and bit that guy, clawed that guy, for 1 point of damage. Okay? Let's go back again and say the dire rat got a 16. And our fighter got a 10 out of everything that they added up together. Well, now the dire rat did 6 points of damage. So that means that the difference between the 10 that the fighter got and the 16 that the dire rat pulled out, that is going to be 6 points of damage that the dire rat managed to do to the fighter. Okay, so we might change that a little bit later. Right now, it's really easy to calculate that, and that's one reason I wanted to just keep it as the difference between the two. A lot of times with these, you're going to also have like a damage die. So for a dire rat, they may only be able to do like a d6 worth of damage, but that's another layer I want to add on later. Okay, so it's not necessarily going to be just staying right here like, oh, well, the dire rat rolled a 20, so that's 23 points of damage, and you could have a dire rat taking out your hero like that, if that was the case. So later on, we're probably going to add another ability or another stat on here for the monsters called damage, and that's how much damage they'll be able to do whenever they actually connect. So, and then they may have multiple attacks and things like that. But like I said, we want to try and start off simple, and then we'll go from there. So right now, it's just the difference in those rolls. Does that make any sense, Anita?
Yeah, it kind of does. You lost me like kind of at the end, but then like the first part made sense. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just whatever the strength roll versus the agility roll, that is your whole attack altogether. If one beats the other, if it's the monster's turn, and the monster beats them, beats the player, that difference in those values that they got, that's the amount of damage that the monster does to the player. And same thing for the player. Whatever the player rolled above the monster's roll, that's the difference. That difference is in the number of points that are going to be taken away from the monster's health. So
So agility is the only one that matters,
well,
not strength.
so strength you use when you're attacking, agility you use when you're defending. Okay, making the attack thing. The attack thing is going on right now. Well, what do you mean when do we make it, Donovan?
I just meant if that was like if we were making that for this, or if we were making that for like next week.
That's for this. That's for
Okay.
one that's due at the end of class on Friday. Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, we're going to be launching that right now. Let's see. Did that help you as well, Anita? As far as maybe a little more clarification?
Yes, that did. It
Okay.
clarified that.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So I saw a thumbs up from Joseph. So Joseph, if you feel like you're good, you're free to go. If anybody else has any questions, I can field them right now. Otherwise, thumbs up and you're good to go. Either way, it's fine. Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate it. Donovan's good. Kai's good. Okay. All right. If you guys are ready to go, you're free to go. I'll just hang out if anybody has any questions. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Hope you have a good one. Thank you, Anita. Appreciate it.